LeBron James may be playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, but reports say he has no plans to live there. Instead, he's putting together a travel plan involving helicopters, 2 states, and a daily commute unlike anything the NBA has ever seen. Let me catch you up. Let's start with what actually happened, because it's wild enough on its own. On a Friday in late July, LeBron James agreed to sign with the Philadelphia 76ers. Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul told ESPN's Shams Charania that James has agreed to join the Sixers on a 2-year, $8 million contract with a player option in year 2. $8 million total for LeBron James. That's a fraction of what he could command elsewhere, and it tells you everything about what this move was actually about. This ends an 8-season run with the Lakers and makes Philadelphia the 4th different franchise for James, marking the first time he will play under a new uniform since the start of the 2018 season. 4 teams now: Cleveland, Miami, back to Cleveland, the Lakers, and now Philly. James posted his own explanation on social media. He said he thought he was done when the season ended, that he wasn't ready to announce it and needed time to really decide, but he was pretty sure he played his last game. He said at that last press conference he was honest. He needed to look at himself and figure out if he still loved the game. Then he said he did. He said he still had more to give and that the last few weeks had been special. Now here's where it gets strange. The same day the deal broke, ESPN's Shams Charania dropped a detail that changed the whole conversation. LeBron James will spend the 2026-27 season with the Philadelphia 76ers, but his home base could be elsewhere. Charania said James could potentially live in New York or New Jersey and commute into Philadelphia. Not might visit, not has a place there too, commute into Philadelphia for work, for games. ESPN's Dave McMenamin backed that up and went further, saying the prospect of living in New York and commuting to Philadelphia only added to the appeal. Added to the appeal, as in, this wasn't a logistics problem James had to solve after signing. It was part of the pitch that got him to sign in the first place. And the mechanics of it are exactly what the title promises. Charania's reporting specifically flagged the travel time between the 2 cities. Multiple outlets picked up on it the same way. Arash Markazi summed up what everyone was reacting to. Shams brings up the possibility of LeBron James living in New York while he plays for the 76ers, and it's a 45-minute trip from New York City to Philadelphia on a chopper. 45 minutes. That's it. That's the entire commute between 2 of the biggest media markets in the country. And it's short enough that an NBA franchise player can seriously consider skipping the move entirely and just flying to work. Bleacher Report ran with the same numbers, framing it as a genuine housing decision, not just chatter. ESPN's Shams Charania said James could potentially live in New York or New Jersey and commute into Philadelphia. And ESPN's Dave McMenamin added that the prospect only added to the appeal. 2 separate ESPN reporters, 2 separate confirmations on the same day the ink was barely dry on the contract. Yahoo Sports took it a step further and pointed out just how specific the logistics were getting. Charania noted that it's just a 45-minute helicopter ride between the cities, perhaps suggesting James wants to commute to the 76ers via helicopter. And that seems excessive, but it is literally LeBron James we're talking about here. That's the anchor of this whole story. A guy who's about to turn 42 is looking at a private helicopter commute as his actual game day routine. In the same year, he's supposedly chasing a championship with a brand new roster. And that detail, living in one state, working in another, closing the gap with a chopper, is exactly why this story blew up the way it did. But to understand why James would even entertain something this unusual, you have to go back to what almost happened instead, and why New York was never just a random detail in this story. It was the whole reason the helicopter idea existed at all. Here's the thing people missed in the first wave of headlines. New York wasn't some random city James picked because it's got good restaurants. New York was supposed to be the actual destination. The helicopter plan only exists because a different plan fell through first. Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, said it plainly on his own podcast. According to reporting, Rich Paul said on his podcast earlier this month that the 4-time MVP would have gone to the New York Knicks if they hadn't just won a championship. Let that sit for a second. The Knicks, Paul didn't hedge on it either. He put it bluntly, if the Knicks hadn't won, there would be no board, meaning there wouldn't have been a list of other teams to even consider. It would have been New York, full stop. Paul kept going, laying out exactly how that would have unfolded. He said James would be going to the Knicks, and Jalen Brunson would literally have to pick up the phone and say there's no issue with him, and that the Knicks had checked in. That's not vague speculation from a blogger. That's LeBron's own agent, describing real contact with a real franchise. about a real jersey swap. That never happened because New York's season ended with a trophy instead of an opening. So think about the timeline here. The Knicks won it all. That victory, which should have been the best thing that ever happened to that franchise, is also the exact reason LeBron James isn't wearing their jersey right now. It's easy to understand why James wouldn't want to join the reigning champs, and Philadelphia is close enough that he can still enjoy all that the city has to offer. Close enough. That's the whole ballgame right there. New York didn't get erased from the plan. It got downgraded from team he plays for to city he lives in. The roster spot went to Philadelphia. The zip code potentially stayed in New York. And it's not like this was some spur-of-the-moment idea cooked up after the ink dried. ESPN's own breakdown of the decision described it as baked into the sales pitch from the jump. The fact that James could live in New York City and commute to Camden for practices, and Philadelphia for games, as ESPN's Shams Charania reported, is a possibility only added to the appeal. Camden for practice. Philadelphia for the games themselves. Two different sites, one commute. None of it in the state where he's actually employed. Paul reiterated the Knicks' near miss in that same ESPN piece, saying had the New York Knicks not won the championship in June, it would have been an easy choice for James to go to New York. Easy choice, not a coin flip, not a maybe. Easy. There's also a wrinkle in this that a lot of people flagged once the reporting settled. James has business in New York that has nothing to do with basketball. As one report put it, James is much more than a basketball player at this point. He's delved into a number of business ventures and appeared on screen in movies several times over the last few years. And being close to New York gives him the chance to pursue off-the-court activities as he did in Los Angeles. Los Angeles was the entertainment capital of his career for 8 years. New York was always going to be the next best thing if Philadelphia was where the roster spot landed. Still, none of that housing logic explains why a guy who says winning matters most would build his season around a commute at all. And that's where the roster comes in. Because Philadelphia didn't just win LeBron on convenience. They won him on the actual argument that this team could get him a ring. If New York was the heart, Philadelphia was the head. And the Sixers didn't just wait around hoping LeBron would pick convenience. They ran an actual recruiting campaign with real people making real calls for weeks. Start with Bob Myers. He's the president of Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, the group that owns the Sixers, and he went on Rich Paul's own podcast during the courtship to make the case directly. Myers made that appeal as a guest on Rich Paul's Game Over podcast during the courtship process, saying if James was there, he'd tell him he honestly believed this was his best chance to win. That's the owner's own executive going on the agent's podcast, mid-negotiation, to make his pitch out loud where everyone could hear it. But Myers wasn't working alone. The players did their part too. According to ESPN's reporting, Myers' interest was followed by Maxey, Brown, and Embiid, campaigning together to sell the 41-year-old star on Philly. Sources told ESPN, maintaining contact through the 3-week process with a steady stream of texts and phone calls. 3 weeks, steady contact. Not one big sales meeting, a sustained group effort from 3 separate stars, all pulling in the same direction. NBC New York's breakdown confirmed exactly who was leading that charge. ESPN's Dave McMenamin reported on July 14 that Maxey, Embiid, and Brown had all been in communication with James and that Maxey was leading the charge. Maxey, the Sixers' own guard, was the point person trying to close this. And it wasn't just business calls either. There's real history here that made the recruitment personal. Sixers star guard Tyrese Maxey knows him well from their summer workouts, and 7-time big man all-star Joel Embiid teamed up with James during the United States run to a gold medal at the 2024 Olympics. These aren't strangers cold calling a free agent. These are guys who'd already shared a locker room, an Olympic podium, and off-season gym time. There's an even deeper connection sitting at the top of the franchise now. James and new Sixers president of basketball operations Mike Gansey go way back. Gansey finished second to James in Mr. Basketball voting for Ohio high school basketball. 2 decades ago, before either one of them had an NBA locker, they were competing for the same high school honor in the same state. Now one of them is running the front office trying to land the guy who beat him for that trophy. So what did James actually walk into roster-wise? The Sixers didn't stand pat waiting for an answer. They went out and got a second superstar in the middle of all this. The team sent Paul George and a haul of picks to the Boston Celtics for Jaylen Brown, a former Finals MVP stacking the roster before James had even said yes. Combine that with what was already there. Philadelphia already had a strong core of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and VJ Edgecombe, but it also added former Finals MVP Jaylen Brown this offseason. And you've got a full-strength starting five that reporters projected as Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Brown, James, and Embiid, coached by Nick Nurse. That roster matters because James was explicit about his priority. As James said, winning a championship was his #1 priority when making his decision. Not comfort, not a bigger paycheck, a ring. And the reporting backs that up from the inside too. A source familiar with James's thinking told ESPN that James's choice hinged on the pursuit of a 5th championship, a 5th ring, at 41, on a 2-year minimum deal, with a roster that was actively upgraded mid-courtship specifically to convince him. Bleacher Report summed up why it made basketball sense. The team should be among the favorites to make it out of the East, and the 41-year-old James won't have to be the first option on offense, as he has been for most of his career. For once in his career, he doesn't have to carry the whole thing. He just has to show up, which brings the two threads of this story crashing into each other. He picked a franchise because it gave him the best shot to win, but he's still trying to keep one foot in the city that almost got him instead. And the reason the Knicks almost got him tells you exactly how close this whole thing came to looking completely different. We already know Rich Paul said the Knicks would have been the pick if they hadn't won the championship, but there's more texture to how close that actually was. And it explains why James still can't quite let go of that city even after signing somewhere else. The core of it is timing. New York's championship run happened at almost exactly the moment James needed to be making his decision. The Knicks completely overwhelmed the Sixers, sweeping them en route to New York's first championship in 53 years. 53 years without a title, and then they win it right as free agency opens, and James is weighing his options. If that title had landed a season earlier or later, the entire situation shifts. Because once a team wins it all, there's no roster spot to campaign for, and no urgency for the front office to make a call. A reigning champion doesn't need to go hunting for a 5th star to bolt onto a title team. The roster that just won stays mostly intact. So the door that was open for James in New York shut the moment the confetti came down, not because the fit was bad, but because the timing made it structurally impossible. That's echoed directly in how Paul framed it. The phrase he used was that Brunson would have had to personally clear it, and that the Knicks organization had already checked in before all that happened. Jalen Brunson would literally have to pick up the phone and say there's no issue with him. And they had checked in. Real contact, real logistics were being discussed. This wasn't hypothetical fan speculation. It was an actual conversation that got cut off by a trophy. And James wasn't just floating around undecided the whole summer either. There was real movement, real hesitation, and real reversal along the way. One report described how free agent forward LeBron James appeared to hint at a possible contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, but quickly pumped the brakes on that notion earlier in the process. So even the Sixers pick wasn't a straight line. There were false starts, hesitations, and moments where it looked like it might not happen at all. At one point, insiders were even knocking down a version of the story that had James supposedly already choosing a team and changing his mind. According to one report, according to those closest to James, one of the biggest rumors surrounding his free agency, that he had already chosen a team before changing his mind, isn't rooted in reality, leaving the 76ers among the contenders still waiting for the NBA's biggest offseason domino to fall. That's how unsettled this process was right up until the very end. Multiple teams stayed in the mix far longer than people expected. In fact, on Rich Paul's podcast weeks before the decision, he'd laid out the entire board. On the Game Over podcast in early July, Paul named the Heat, Cavaliers, Timberwolves, and Warriors among the other teams in the mix for James. 4 other franchises, all with a real shot, all eventually passed over. Betting markets were even shifting mid-summer. One update had new betting odds, suggesting the Miami Heat were the favorites to sign LeBron James as a decision loomed. So Philadelphia wasn't some inevitable landing spot. It beat out a real competitive field, including a team that was briefly the favorite. So when you line all of it up, a stacked field of suitors, a Knicks near miss killed by a championship parade, a Sixers pitch that took 3 weeks of daily contact to close, the helicopter plan starts to make a strange kind of sense. James didn't pick New York. New York picked itself off the board. But he clearly wasn't ready to let it go entirely. And a 45-minute flight was the compromise that let him keep a piece of both cities. That compromise is now playing out in public, with an entire fan base and a small army of reporters watching every wrinkle of it unfold in real time. Once the deal was official, the reaction wasn't quiet. It was loud, fast, and came from every direction, from state houses to sports radio, to the locker room itself. Pennsylvania's governor didn't wait for a press conference. Josh Shapiro posted directly, declaring that LeBron James was coming to Philly, and by the power vested in him as governor of the Commonwealth and a diehard Sixers fan, he proclaimed the day LeBron James Day, welcoming him to the city of brotherly love. A sitting governor making it official before the team even played a preseason game. Local media leaned into the moment too. One outlet described the mood around the city bluntly, with a headline capturing the disbelief directly. It actually happened. LeBron James picked Philadelphia. That kind of reaction from a fan base that's chased big free agents before and come up empty plenty of times tells you how unexpected this landing spot really was. Local writers had fun with the money angle too, joking about what could possibly have sealed the deal at that price point, floating everything from country club memberships to, fittingly, free use of the Josh Harris helicopter, referencing the Sixers' own owner. The joke landed because it wasn't far from the actual reporting. A helicopter really was part of the conversation, just not necessarily his. Behind the scenes, the ripple effects kept spreading. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, James's old Lakers teammate, started negotiating his own exit from Memphis, specifically to follow him to Philadelphia. Veteran Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was negotiating a buyout with the Memphis Grizzlies and plans to sign with the Sixers, and James and KCP won the 2020 NBA title together on the Lakers. One championship partnership trying to reassemble itself in a completely different city years later. Then there's the Sun. For a while, speculation swirled that James might try to engineer something involving his own kid on the Lakers roster. Some believed James would try and force a trade to his new team in order to continue playing in the NBA with his son. And in the days ahead of James signing with the Philadelphia 76ers, it's been reported that the Lakers want real pieces to move Bronny. That thread is still loose. Nobody's closed the book on whether father and son end up under the same roof, in the same building, on the same roster. And through all of it, the helicopter detail never really went away. It kept resurfacing in every recap, every live blog, every breakdown of the move, because it was the one part of this deal nobody could quite get used to. A 41-year-old signing for scraps by his standards, joining a stacked roster built specifically to lure him in, while planning to fly over state lines to get to work. Whether that plan survives the grind of an actual 82-game season is the part nobody can answer yet. Weather delays, fatigue, back-to-backs on the road, none of that disappears, just because a chopper cuts the commute to under an hour. But for right now, heading into training camp, the plan stands exactly as it was first reported. Home in New York, or maybe New Jersey, and a short flight away from a team that spent 3 weeks convincing him this was worth uprooting his career for. Whether he's actually stepping off that helicopter onto a practice court in Camden come October is something only the season itself is going